Sometimes the way people treat you starts with how you treat yourself, or how you speak about yourself out loud. I've heard many older adults say things like, "Oh, I'm just a burden," or "I'm too old to keep up." It may feel like a harmless little joke, but over time it becomes a message people begin to believe, including you. When you're over 60, your confidence might not be what it used to be, and hearing your own voice putting yourself down can quietly chip away at your sense of worth. The problem is others pick up on that tone too. If you talk like you don't matter, some folks may begin to act like that's true, and you deserve better than that. Far better. I remember Harold, a retired railroad worker from outside St. Louis. He was 74 when we met, and during a routine checkup he chuckled and said, "Doc, I'm just an old man in the way of his kids' busy lives." I asked him gently if they'd ever said that. He shook his head no, but said, "Well, I've just always figured." The truth is they hadn't said it, he had. Then there was Esther, 69, a widow from Florida. She'd say, "No one needs my opinion anymore." But during a family dinner, her granddaughter asked for advice, and Esther gave a calm, thoughtful answer that made everyone pause. That moment flipped a switch for her. She realized her voice still carried weight, and she started using it more. Over time, she noticed people were not just listening, but turning to her again. What often helps is catching yourself in those little put-downs and choosing different words. Instead of, "I'm just an old fool," say, "I've lived long enough to see a few things." Speak from your experience. Speak with quiet pride. You are not a background character in your own life. Your story still matters, and how you tell it, to others and to yourself, makes a world of difference. It's easy to think that respect only comes from outside, but often it starts within. When you constantly put others first, ignore your own needs, or say yes when you mean no, you send a message that your time, comfort, and boundaries aren't worth much. And here's the thing, people, even the kind ones, start to take that as permission. For older adults, this is especially common. You want to be easygoing, avoid tension, not seem difficult. But over time, that quiet tolerance can feel like invisibility. And invisibility wears down the spirit. I once worked with Linda, 68, a retired receptionist from Mesa, Arizona. Her neighbor would call late at night, not for emergencies, but to chat or complain. Linda always answered. She said, "I didn't want to seem rude." But after weeks of broken sleep and rising anxiety, her blood pressure spiked. We talked and I suggested a simple boundary: no calls after 9 p.m. Linda was nervous but finally told her neighbor, kindly but clearly. At first, the neighbor was annoyed, but soon she adapted. More importantly, Linda felt stronger. Then there was Ben, 71, who always volunteered at church, even when he was exhausted. When he finally said, "I need to rest this week," something shifted. People respected him more, not less. One of the most helpful steps you can take is to name a small boundary and keep it. For example, "I don't answer the phone after 9 p.m. Or, "I can't do that today, but thank you for asking." Simple words, big power. You teach others how to treat you by how you treat yourself. A gentle no is not rejection. It's self-respect spoken softly. Many older adults I've spoken with carry a quiet fear, not of being alone, but of being a bother. They say yes to things they don't want, stay silent when something hurts, or pretend not to notice disrespect. Why? Because they don't want to be that person, the difficult one. But the cost of always keeping the peace is that your own needs get buried. Over time, this kind of quiet self-erasing can lead to resentment, sadness, and even depression. Being easy to get along with shouldn't mean erasing who you are. I'll never forget Walter, 74, a retired mechanic living with his daughter's family in Ohio. At dinner, his son-in-law would joke about his hearing, interrupt him, or speak over him like he wasn't there. Walter would laugh politely, but his eyes said something else. After a few months, he told me, "I feel like furniture, like I'm just taking up space." We talked about speaking up calmly. Next time it happened, Walter simply said, "I'm not comfortable with those jokes, please stop." It got quiet. Then his daughter said, "You're right, Dad. I'm sorry." From that day, things changed. Another client, Dolores, 70, told me she'd stopped going to her weekly knitting group because they often made her the punchline. I encouraged her to try saying, "That joke doesn't sit right with me." When she finally did, one woman apologized, another changed the subject, and Dolores stayed on her terms. One of the best things you can do is practice saying, "I'd rather not," or "That's not okay with me." Calmly, clearly, and without guilt. That's not rudeness, as it's self-trust. Being honest about your feelings doesn't make you difficult, it makes you real, and real people deserve real respect. When someone snaps at you, talks down to you, or acts impatient, it's easy to take it personally. And if you've already felt overlooked or unappreciated, those moments sting even more. But here's what I've come to understand. Most people's rudeness says more about their own stress, fear, or frustration than about you. Still, when you're older, it's common to start believing the worst, that maybe you are in the way. But that's a lie. And it's one we must stop telling ourselves. Evelyn, 70, told me about an appointment she had at a local clinic. She was asking a question when the young nurse cut her off and said, "We don't have time for that, Mum." Evelyn went quiet. Later, she cried in the parking lot, not because of the words themselves, but because it felt like the world had stopped making room for her. I gently asked what she wished she had done differently. "I wish I'd said something." So next time she did. When another receptionist spoke abruptly, Evelyn calmly said, "Please speak to me with respect." The room froze. And then it changed. The woman blinked, apologized, and started again, gentler. Evelyn said she felt 10 years taller. Another client, Joe, 75, simply started walking away from rude cashiers. Not in anger, but in quiet dignity. A simple tool that often works is this. Pause, take a breath and say, "I'd like to be spoken to with kindness, please." Or, if that feels too hard, walk away without a word. Protecting your peace is a E. Full sentence. You don't owe anyone your silence just to keep them comfortable. You have every right to take up space, calmly, proudly, and without apology. As we get older, the circle around us may shrink, and that can make any connection feel precious. So sometimes, we hold on to people who don't treat us well, just to avoid being alone. But staying in relationships where you're constantly belittled, ignored, or drained doesn't bring comfort. It brings quiet harm. Emotional exhaustion can wear down your body, your spirit, and your sense of self. And often, the most respectful thing you can do for yourself is to walk away. Tom, 76, a retired plumber from Michigan, used to meet up weekly with an old friend from high school. They'd been close for decades, but lately, Tom would come home from those lunches feeling worse, tired, tense, small. His friend constantly made jabs, "You're getting slow, old man," or "That's a dumb idea." Tom laughed it off, but the weight built up. When his granddaughter visited, she asked, "Why do you see someone who makes you feel bad?" That question hit home. Tom stopped returning the calls. He started spending more time with a neighbor, Helen, who shared his love for gardening. Their chats were light, kind, and filled with laughter. The contrast was clear, and Tom felt lighter. Another client, Rose, 72, ended a long friendship after years of being talked over. "I thought I needed her," she said, "but I needed peace more." What helps many people is this simple choice. Pay attention to how you feel after being with someone. If you feel drained, small, or tense, that's information. Trust it, and give yourself permission to pull back. You deserve kindness, not just company. There's strength in choosing peace over pattern, and you're never too old to make that choice. Setting boundaries isn't a one-time event. It's a steady practice. You can ask someone to stop making certain comments or to respect your space. But if they ignore that request, the real test comes next. Do you let it slide? Or do you remind them gently but firmly? For many older adults, that second time is the hardest. You don't want to nag or cause tension. But without repetition, boundaries fade. And when they fade, so does the sense of being respected. Dolores, 69, a former librarian from Oregon, told her son she didn't like the way he joked about her weight during family dinners. He laughed it off and said, "You know I'm just kidding." The next time it happened again. This time Dolores didn't laugh. She calmly stood up and said, I've already told you this isn't funny to me. I'm going to step out now. She left the table. Her silence wasn't angry. It was clear. That moment shifted things. Her son apologized later, and the jokes stopped. Another story comes from Raymond, 73, who asked his neighbors not to enter his garden without asking. When they did it again, he reminded them without raising his voice and added, "Next time, I'll have to put up a sign." They finally took him seriously because he stood by his word. What helps is this simple approach. If someone crosses a line again, don't argue. Just say, "I've already shared how I feel. I'm asking again." And then act calmly, consistently, kindly. Your steady voice matters more than a loud one. Respect grows where your words and actions match, again and again. If any of these stories felt familiar, I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what stayed with you. And if you'd like more gentle guidance like this, be sure to subscribe and click the bell. Most of all, remember this: you are not alone. Just by being here, you remind the world what quiet strength looks like.